Okay, awesome. So obviously we've reached the final day of the most intensive part of the cleanse, which is obviously the colon cleanse in itself. And so, yeah, I actually been running around myself today, getting the house restocked again with some food. And I thought the most important thing to do to talk, well, actually to talk about today very briefly would be about what you should be eating, because of course there needs to be some level of maintenance to your system. The other thing about cleaning your body is that it's a consistent process. Obviously you can't clean everything out within one cleanse. You get a great deal of it, and then now you need to work with your body at finishing off what it needs to cleanse. Likewise, obviously you can see the benefits of cleaning the colon, and there's a lot more organs that actually can be cleansed. So obviously that's what the internal cleanse part of this is about, which we'll be going on. The internal cleanse, however, won't be broadcasted daily. Actually, what I plan to end up metamorphosizing the Ascension Techniques platform into is actually a place where you come to get different levels of information. So I believe tomorrow night we're gonna start these feature films, which is basically films that are very important. Not a lot of stuff that people have seen, just a lot of documentaries and things that have been done, and then the most that they've been able to make it to is something like Pirate Bay. And those documentaries will definitely be about food and about different things going on in the food industry. So the next time that you do go and eat something, you'll be a little bit more conscious to what you put in your mouth. It's a major thing as far as just expansion in general in this world, just to take responsibility for what you're doing to your body. I just recently saw a lady that was walking out of the ice cream store, and you can tell that she was really having a hard time with her health. But you see that doesn't stop her from getting another ice cream. So what you're actually looking at is you're looking at when the mind and the taste buds and all the rest of the stuff has overpowered the body and the spirit so much that it's going to actually put in something that will hinder them. Now remember, the mind, even though if it's dull already, will just continue to become more dull. So it will never become conscious that, hey, it's the food that's actually making me like this, etc. So that's why I say the mind is also the one that says, hey, I want to eat this, this tastes good, etc. And then the body, of course, having to pay for that. So we have to realize that this entire level of our expansion is about us just basically becoming self-substantiated to the best of our ability, meaning to become more conscious of even every single breath that we're taking. So let me just check really briefly. Okay, Roka said it's maybe a little bit silent for him. I encourage you to turn up your volume, which you'll see on the actual platform itself. That's probably where your sound issue is coming from, because it looks like to me, let me just test it really briefly. Okay. Yep, sound's coming in loud and clear. So what I've done is I obviously run out really briefly to the store. The thing with Costa Rica is that when you're going to get organic food, depending upon what area you're in, there is an actual company, or it's not even really a company, it's more of just really good people that decided to start getting organic food to all of Costa Rica. But you actually have to go and pick it up. So next week on Tuesday, we'll actually be going down to Nosara to pick up some organic food, because that's the closest place from here. So it's about an hour and a half away. But generally, if you're living in any of these populated beach communities or in town, etc., you'll have access to organic food. But in my case, it's not as accessible unless I go the specific times of the week. There, of course, is a market here every there's a market here every week, and that's, or even during the week, and that's called the Feria. It's basically where they bring in all the vegetables, and people who've seen that video that I shot a while ago, they're familiar with what that is. That's basically that Costa Rica is obviously a large agricultural country, and so many people bring in their vegetables and fruits and things and sell them on Sunday or Saturday or whenever the event is taking place. However, a lot of those vegetables are grown by just standard farmers that are using pesticide in the crops. And of course, that makes a big difference for a lot of farmers, especially if they can make it or not. Because if they lose their crop, or if they don't use these seeds that they're being given, et cetera, then they can't even afford to stay alive. Obviously, if you don't have a good outlet for organic food and you don't have people that are willing to pay that premium price for it, then it doesn't even become possible for the farmer to actually grow it. So also the baby's in the studio today. I will let you know that. That's another reason why I'm having to speed through today's show, and there's kind of a few things that are quite behind just because I've taken out the time to just continuously do these shows daily. So I do actually have a 2 o'clock meeting with someone that's very important, but I wanted to make sure what is most important gets transmitted today, which is that diet. So what I did was I bought somewhat of a variety of food just to give you an example of what you can do in these categories of food. And the most important thing that I felt was to be practical, because obviously not everyone has access to a Whole Foods. Of course, we don't have one here either. But if you're in the U.S., you're in just, a major hub, you're in an extreme advantage over many people, because now that eating well and eating what's great for your body has become more important, then there's at least outlets to actually get that. In certain places, though, you won't find those outlets at all. So you have to refer to something like Amazon, which provides everything that is sitting here except for probably the vegetables, but mainly in regards to the staples. So we'll begin there. I just want to talk about a few foods that will allow you to bridge the gap between what you're doing now and what you need to be doing. And so we'll start with something like breakfast. Of course, breakfast is generally filled with something like oatmeal at best, which of course oatmeal has a lot of gluten in it. Even though it's been recommended as one of the best cereals, it's actually not, especially if it's not really good high quality oats. So what you're dealing with is that during breakfast, you need to be trying to utilize something like quinoa. You can use this as a hot breakfast cereal. Of course, you have access to all your fruits. And then more than anything, it's the smoothies, which I showed you in the beginning of the program. I had a lot of jars and things out with different substances like maca, and then of course a base protein from where I grab mine is of course Sun Warrior, and there's a plethora of other places that have organic protein. So what you need to be working with during breakfast, just to kind of get into it and then be done with it, is you can utilize something like quinoa in a smoothie, and then you're ready to really deal with the day and even go to the gym, because you don't have so much stuff in your stomach where you can't work out, and then you don't have so much stuff in your stomach that's dragging you down, making you sleepy so you can't think. So moving on from there, I've also included here just the coconut, because obviously the palm tree generally is never manipulated. Like it's never, because palm is a very resistant tree and the coconut is very resistant fruit. It doesn't really take any pesticides to actually keep the bugs and things away from these plants. So another thing that you should think of is that there are also obviously other there's obviously other plants other fruits that will have less pesticide because they don't get attacked as much. Like here in Costa Rica, most of the papayas that you'll find, probably 80% of the papayas are organic, because those trees are just growing everywhere. Same thing with the mangoes. All those trees are just growing even on the side of the road. So it's not hard to find those kind of substances in the organic form. Moving along, you have stuff like a tahini, which of course is ground sesame seed. Inside of the sesame there's a smaller seed, and they take that seed and they grind it, and it comes out as a cream. And you can use this as a way to make salad dressings, dressings for your sandwiches, and things that actually that taste good and will still give you that flavor that you're looking for to make your food taste good. Now remember, this is not someone that is an expert at dietitian and whole foods and organic foods that's trying to explain this to you now. I'm not going to give you the full concise explanation. I feel like there's many people, especially on the internet, that can really give it to you as far as how much information you need to know about raw foods. I'm just giving you a simple kind of a guideline to go by when you do hit the market and you decide to make your purchase for some food. The other thing is that you're going to want to get away from those packages of seasoning that are, they're like a blend. So it's like vegetable sauce or Italian sauce or steak sauce or Lawi seasoning salt. All of those are just horrible for you. They contain, of course, the salt that we were talking about earlier in our programs, the salt that actually is really synthetic salt that destroys your system. So when you're seasoning your food, you want to definitely go to the aisle of seasonings and grab some celery seed. I got here some ginger, some ground ginger. I have some turmeric. There's oregano. So you really want to start utilizing those natural seasonings and make that what you're seasoning your food rather than those all-purpose seasonings. A lot of people are going to be looking for where they can, how they can supplement the bread thing or the tortilla thing or the dinner roll thing. And obviously rice cakes is not a good supplement for that. It's not even going to really compare. But if you want to start weaning yourself off, this is one of the levels of what you can do with that process. Of course, a lot of people are not advocates of rice that are in the health food industry. But again, we're working on being practical here, getting people to basically transfer into the new diet. That's another thing. You can't really expect people to be transferring into a diet immediately unless they get some kind of big inclination or big epiphany moment that's what's been holding them back. That's really what happened for me with becoming a vegetarian. I was told the food was decaying, and I asked how, and they said because the food dies within minutes. Any real carnivore actually eats up the food right away because they need the nutrients that are within the blood. No carnivore seasons the meat. So you're actually, what you're eating is already decayed meat that has been injected in everything to make it look like it's actually fresh. And then once I went and researched that very briefly, I stopped eating meat that day. But I didn't go into a holistic diet like I was supposed to. The person didn't give me the rest of the information. I actually became what is known as the infamous junk food vegetarian. This means that, you're eating Morning Star, you're frying French fries in canola oil or even in olive oil before you understand that olive oil heated is even worse for you. So what happens is that you start making those baby steps towards actually getting your diet in complete line. And there's nothing wrong with that. So still realize that there's a lot of this that you're going to have to work with yourself on. I was just making sure this stuff was in the camera. Another thing is that, especially for your supplement and stable, if you're just a big eater and you feel like you're not getting enough, especially with this rice cake stuff, then you're going to want to add something else that has more girth into it. And I would always go with the brown rices. Again, a lot of people that work in these whole food industries, etc., say all these rices are no good really because they're all seeds for grasses and that they should at least be sprouted or something like that before they're eaten. So that's their opinion of it. And I'm just, again, telling you what you can access right at your local market that can still hold you over. The other thing is with all your nuts and all your seeds, you're going to want to soak them, if you can soak them. Because what really happens is that if you're creative in the kitchen, or if you can even access recipes on the internet, you can really create some dishes that are not as bad at all, especially to the taste. It just takes more time to prepare something like that. When going to the store, what I could really see is that you had this fresh section that was the smallest part of the store, and then you had this huge in the box, in the can section, which is basically all the stuff that's shipped in. And of course, the major rift between all of this stuff is really going to be how good it is for the body. So it's almost like a rule of thumb that when you see things that are dried out and in a box and in a can or something like that, then you're not going to be dealing with something that's going to give you the energy levels that you're looking for. However, again, you're going to have to look at some of the stuff that you may have been eating, especially if it's something like fast food, and then look at something like maybe if it's just some palmitos or some palm hearts in a jar. Even though that's not the best way to eat palmitos, it's still going to be much better than going out to get a hamburger. So take it easy on yourself in the sense where it's figuring out exactly what you're going to eat, but also do your due diligence to walk around the grocery store and start thinking about what can I make up. Maybe I'll throw some of this rice in, chop some cilantro up, add some of this celery seed and some of this ground ginger in there and soak some of these almonds and get that all working together and then, create something. And so again, referring to the internet for recipes and things is going to be great. I've grabbed just some standard stuff like some tomatoes and sprouts. You always want to stock up on your sprouts. I remember when I was younger, actually there's another one, of course, the green sprouts. I used to hate those sprouts. I used to throw them in the sandwich. But now I found out that obviously they're not as, to me these days, they don't taste as bad. So you can really get a nice sprout thing going on. And again, some people listening to this conversation like, none of this stuff sounds good to me. But again, what you're doing is you're working on establishing a relationship between your mouth, the vortex, the black hole, and your stomach, which actually has to process in their organs and their body, and which actually has to process all this stuff and is in many cases failing to do that. So what happens is that when you see yourself, as I said earlier, eating something that is causing damage to you, there's an underlying problem there. It actually means other things on a much more deeper level because you're not really at the stage yet where you're willing to say that if I can really help myself, I will. Because obviously putting something bad in your system is not helping yourself. So this is a major part of the level of how the controllers are really working with people's mind to keeping themselves back. But again, with 100% responsibility, it's still up to you to figure out what you need to put in your system. The other thing is that realize that, especially with the ancient cultures, they spent most of their time figuring out exactly what they were going to eat and how they were going to eat it and cultivating it. So there was an entirely different relationship between man, woman, and food before than it is now, because obviously a lot of this stuff, or all this stuff, is bought to us, and we don't even have to go out and really do much to cultivate it. That also stems into why we need to eat so much of it. The reality is that when you understand how much is put into putting the food there in front of you, then you're actually able to absorb all the energy that was put into all the water and all the sunlight and all that was put into making it grow. So generally, if you're working in that field of cultivating crops and things, you see how much work and toil is put into it. So when you're finally eating it and absorbing it, it's definitely a better quality, one, but because you've put it together for yourself, you know you have to eat it. But two, there's also a deeper connection. So that's something that we will have to begin to reestablish as we go on in the future, with as far as how to get certain things, at least sprouts and stuff, that we can grow on our own. That way that we can at least enjoy taking in the essence of that energy. The other thing is that never be afraid of grabbing, and you'll see these a lot. This actually is just salvia or sage. Never be afraid of grabbing some of these fresh seasonings that you'll find in the same section that you'll find your fruits and vegetables in. That's of course a lot more better than some of these that are already dried out and things. But again, I like the way the cleanse was like good, better, best. This is really what you're dealing with here. It's still going to be great for you to change your diet. So I think if people want to know what am I going to be enjoying for lunch, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably take the pointers of what was written in the book, and I got some organic potatoes. I'm probably going to boil them first just to make sure I can get all of anything else that may be in them out of them. And then I'm probably going to throw them into the oven with some nice fresh herbs. And then I'm probably going to add some salvia. And then when it's probably done, I'll probably throw some olive oil on it and start that way. And maybe, geez, I'm not really sure. I haven't thought about eating. That's the other thing. I know now that I have to come off this fast, but I'm not rushing necessarily into throwing something in my system because I'm so hungry. So I'm being very cautious to what I really put in here so that I can keep the mind in optimal condition. So what I'm going to do is, because obviously I have to start, I have to start preparing for this next meeting that I have. It's just an actual business call that the people have been really waiting to talk to me. And of course, I've been on the cleanse, so I've been like, hey, you guys got to wait till I get off the cleanse. It'll be on Tuesday. So I set that for 2 o'clock. I did want to start going over day 1 because obviously I'm going to keep going with the internal cleanse. And you'll hear me chime in about different things with the internal cleanse as I'm going through the shows that are scheduled for this week. Obviously, there's a show scheduled for Friday on Truth Frequency Radio, and there's also a show scheduled for Sunday on Astro Quest. So I'll be I'll be bringing it this week, and as I'm bringing it, I'll still be going through the cleanse, so you guys will hear me chime in about it. Obviously, it's the last day for those that were of the, actually we'll talk about those that were on the first group that started first. They will be on the pre-cleanse. Actually, I believe it depends if you took 1, 2, or 3 days, but you may be ready now to start your first day of the internal cleanse. So I'm just going to address those people. You may have one more day, or you may be ready today, or you may have already started. But obviously, before breakfast, you're going to take the toxin neutralizer. You'll find that in your box. You'll take the liver and the gallbladder. Well, excuse me. Before breakfast, you'll take 1 capsule of toxin neutralizer, 1 capsule of liver and gallbladder rejuvenator, 1 large para cleanser, 1 capsule of that, and then 1 dose of the large parasite cleanser tincture, which is in the bottle. That's called the cleanser 2. And then a small parasite cleanser, 1 dose of that, which is also the tincture. And so what you'll notice with this is that you really need to be on top of understanding exactly how you're going to take these and just lay them out for yourself. So that way it doesn't become really confusing for you, because as you'll see when you move into lunch, you're going to only take 1 toxin neutralizer capsule, 1 capsule liver and gallbladder rejuvenator, and 1 large parasite cleanser. And it says, note, because of individual variations in drawing up liquid into your dropper, you may notice you finish bottles of liquid formulas before the end of 7 days. This is perfect. Continue with remaining formulas as directed. So if you run out of some of the tinctures a little bit earlier before the 7 days, understand that that's generally a little bit normal, because it's about how much you're putting into that dropper. And then before dinner, there again is an entire array of capsules and doses that you need to take. And then in the end, you need to take your digestive stimulator number. And then before bed, you're going to go ahead and take a drink of the toxin absorber and a packet of that and the friendly bacteria replenisher. So as you can see, the internal cleanse is going to entail you keeping up a lot more with exactly what you have to administer to the system. But at least the benefit of it is that, well, I don't know if it's a benefit or a drawback. I wouldn't even put it like that. But you won't actually be on the fast, so you won't be dealing with the entire hunger component. But again, if you're going into the internal cleanse, it's very important that you listen up today about some of the eating pointers if you haven't already start improving your diet, and realize that the more toxins you put in the body, when you go to utilize the next level of cleanse, the less effect it's really going to have, because it's going to get absorbed into all of that stuff that you're actually eating. So just contemplate what you're doing before you do it. It's going to be the easiest way to get through it. Obviously today, which I haven't ate lunch yet, I'm going to have to fix lunch for the wife today because she's of course been on the fast, and I have a tendency not to eat sometimes anyway, but I don't like to impose that on everyone. So I do want to be able to get in there and do something, whip up something real quick. So I'm going to take this last 5 minutes. So of course for lunch, fresh salad, steamed vegetables, brown rice, baked potato, anything like that in small portions is going to hold you over. Remember, the whole thing is to slowly introduce food back into the system, because you don't want the organs going into some level of shock, like they haven't eaten anything, so they're probably at the beach right now chilling out. So if you're going to now put food back in the system, they're going to have to, it'll be aggressive for them if you put foods that are toxic right back into them. It's almost like with anything that you're dealing with, if it's not used to it and then all of a sudden you put it back in there, and then based on the ingredients, science, whatever you want to use, that the ingredients are not okay, and you throw it right back in the system, you could throw your system into some level of shock. So really you want to go like this with putting food back into the system. And you'll notice that the longer fast you do, the more difficult it is to introduce food back into the system. Even after a 12-day fast, one time I ate a piece of avocado and my mouth started stinging and everything, and I had to spit it out. And I was like, what's wrong? And they was like, yeah, you can't eat any kind of acidic foods right away when you've been on a cleanse that long. Your body is not even adjusted to, and your saliva and all that stuff's got to get readjusted. So just remember that. So everything is pretty much the same with understanding the last day of this. Obviously, you're going to take a toxin absorber package tonight. For those that were on step 3, which is actually today, excuse me. And then for after that, which is tomorrow, you're going to now start the first day of the pre-cleanse again. This time, of course, not having to go through the fast or backing down the food, but watching your food intake, and then you're going to start the internal cleanse. Basically, you got to stay away from the sugars. Everyone's pretty much aware of that, but some people don't understand how serious it is. So I'm going to show the video tomorrow so that you can get more insight on exactly why sugar is, looking at the bandwidth here, sugar is such a dangerous chemical for the system. Honey, if you just have to have that sweet taste, realistically, I've never, because I've been utilizing honey for a long time if I need anything that has something sweet to it. And I've never seen anything that I really couldn't introduce honey into that was just going to throw the taste off of it so much that it wasn't going to be worth it. So you do have alternatives that are not as bad for you. Honey is more like a medicine in many cases, so they do talk about introducing too much honey into the system. But realistically, again, good, better, best. Honey, white sugar versus honey. You see what I mean? Obviously, there's no competition. So you're going to want to put in some honey into your things if you need to get the sweet thing out of your system. So I heard someone mention that. Another person has a question about what do we do about social requirements for eating, like meeting with his boss, requiring him to eat toxic food or potentially causing a bad impression. The reality is that most of the time it doesn't cause a bad impression. Generally, when someone sees that you're a lot more astute at paying attention to what exactly you're eating, they generally feel at that point somewhat level, because they know that they're eating things, that it's a common sense that they're eating things that are actually not benefiting them. And so any boss that has an employee that is actually eating the right thing can only see that employee as being more clear and more in tune with not only themselves but also the company itself. So if it needs to be explained that way when they say, hey, why are you eating that funny stuff? I wouldn't, unless you're going to lose your job. I mean, then you just have to start realizing where you are and whose dominion you're under. But reality is that I wouldn't conform to someone else's peer pressure or criteria and damage your body just for the sake of appearing like you're normal in front of them. If it's going to cause a major issue, then of course you have to use your own discretion. But realistically, people that eat anything are always more respectful of individuals that do watch what they eat and then actually ask for pointers and things and stuff that they could weed out of their diet in order to get better. So remember that sometimes it's not always that they expect for you to eat this stuff with them and they'll feel like they're alienated if you don't. Sometimes if you show them that, hey, I just don't, I don't eat that stuff, especially if it's anymore. Like, I don't eat it anymore. I got to do something new this year. It's always good to come in like that because it'll be the same thing that the other person has been thinking about. Trust me. Some other people were talking about agave and coconut sugar as being ideal sweeteners. Exactly. Especially agave is definitely great sweeteners, and those are also available on Amazon, as the person pointed out. And someone said almond butter also. It's quite tasty. It's good, better, best. If you can actually get some almond butter, it's going to be a lot better than you using some type of corn syrup. Someone is asking, do they still have to use distilled water with organic sulfur? Of course, the organic sulfur mixture is an entire ingredient thing. Actually, you can refer to Luis or Hull on the Resistance website, and he'll be able to tell you more about that. I can't really get into it with you because I haven't utilized the sulfur yet. But as far as the distilled water, yes, you really do want to keep that clean water going through the system. Again, if you have an opportunity to get a water distiller, it's an excellent investment because you can make as much water as you want. Then you can start incorporating into preparing your foods and things with it, which we talked about yesterday is generally the drawback of a person who's attempting to utilize purified water is that they generally won't cook with it because it just takes too much water to boil things in, et cetera, especially to throw that water away. So if you have a water distiller, you have access to this clean water all the time, and so it becomes very beneficial for you. Okay, so that looks like everyone's question today. And again, I do regret that I have to cut out here a little early, but there's, duty calls, as I always say. There's just tons of stuff always going on over here. And like I said, I'm looking to expand the platform even more now. I'm going to definitely be getting into some other things. I'm probably going to be doing some cooking shows here within a couple of weeks just to give people some more ideas of what they can eat. But the main thing I want everyone to really know now is that at your supermarket, there is some stuff that you can grab. That's one. Two, you really have to take control, 100% substantiation, responsibility of what you're putting in the black hole. The black hole will eat anything, meaning that it can get to a state where anything can go in the mouth, and everyone knows what I'm talking about. So what happens is that you need to get some level of control over this because it's connected so much to the rest of the body. It does really suffer or benefit from what you do with it. A good conversation to have with the body is about as far as if you think the food tastes good or not, and it's not as good for you, start thinking about how good it is for the body and the agreement that the body and the mouth have come to, or the mind have come to, for putting great things in the system now, so that way a person can be operating at optimal condition these days. Because one of the most important things is now you got to realize these folks are not playing games. Like, whatever expansion is necessary for this world needs to happen now. You see that most of everything is going in the opposite direction that it needs to be going. And it doesn't appear that many people can even figure out how to turn it around. How are you going to stop people from using cars? How are you going to start implementing something beside oil? How are you going to remove plastic? How are you going to remove corn? So all these different things are not to be contemplated by the standard mindset. They're actually to be tackled by the enlightened mind as the solutions come really fast, because we know one thing. Before the problem existed, the solution existed first. All higher vibratory things do come before lower vibratory fields, which are just the lower part of the spectrum of slowed down light. So always remember that any problem that you may be facing, the solution always exists. It's just about whether you're equipped or not to be able to divine or to be able to actually clearly see that solution. And what gives you a great deal of clarity is cleaning the filters or the organs, so that way when you're looking through the lenses of the planet, that you're actually able to see things as clear as they really should be without any distortion or toxic view. So I wanted to say wholeness and balance vibrations to everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all the people that participated in the cleansing. Of course, we're going to keep going, and as I said, there'll be periodic comments about it. But all the individuals that participated, it's been excellent. It's been really allowing other people to continue with the cleanse themselves and to get through it. There's been a lot of things that have introduced, a lot of information that everyone has shared together. So that's been just a major expansion for us, because obviously the more we know, the more we expand. Wholeness. Video that I shot a while ago, they're familiar with what that is. That's basically that Costa Rica is obviously a large agricultural country, and so many people bring in their vegetables and fruits and things and sell them on Sunday or Saturday or whenever the event is taking place. However, a lot of those vegetables are grown by just standard farmers that are using pesticide in the crops, and of course that makes a big difference for a lot of farmers, especially if they can make it or not. Because if they lose their crop, or if they don't use these seeds that they're being given, et cetera, then they can't even afford to stay alive. Obviously, if you don't have a good outlet for organic food and you don't have people that are willing to pay that premium price for it, then it doesn't even become possible for the farmer to actually grow it. So also the baby's in the studio today. I will let you know that. That's another reason why I'm having to speed through today's show, and there's kind of a few things that are quite behind, just because I've taken out the time to just continuously do these shows daily. So I do actually have a 2 o'clock. These buds and all the rest of the stuff has overpowered the body and the spirit so much that it's going to actually put in something that will hinder them. Now remember, the mind, even though if it's dull already, will just continue to become more dull. So it will never become conscious that, hey, it's the food that's actually making me like this, etc. So that's why I say the mind is also the one that says, hey, I want to eat this, this tastes good, etc. And then the body, of course, having to pay for that. So we have to realize that this entire level of our expansion is about us just basically becoming self-substantiated to the best of our ability, meaning to become more conscious of even every single breath that we're taking. So let me just check really briefly. Okay, Roka said it's maybe a little bit silent for him. I would I encourage you to turn up your volume, which you'll see on the actual platform itself. That's probably where your sound issue is coming from, because it looks like what I plan to end up metamorphosizing the Ascension Techniques platform into is actually a place where you come to get different levels of information. So I believe tomorrow night we're gonna start these feature films, which is basically films that are very important. Not a lot of stuff that people have seen, just a lot of documentaries and things that have been done, and then the most that they've been able to make it to is something like Pirate Bay. And those documentaries will definitely be about food and about different things going on in the food industry. So the next time that you do go and eat something, you'll be a little bit more conscious to what you put in your mouth. It's a major thing as far as just expansion in general in this world, just to take responsibility for what you're doing to your body. I just recently saw a lady that was walking out of the ice cream store, and you can tell that she was really having a hard time with her health. But you see, that doesn't stop her from getting another ice cream. So what you're actually looking at is you're looking at when the mind and the taste. Let me just test it really briefly. Yep, sound's coming in loud and clear. So what I've done is I obviously run out really briefly to the store. The thing with Costa Rica is that when you're going to get organic food, depending upon what area you're in, there is an actual company, or it's not even really a company, it's more of just really good people that decided to start getting organic food to all of Costa Rica. But you actually have to go and pick it up. So next week on Tuesday, we'll actually be going down to Nosara to pick up some organic food, because that's the closest place from here. So it's about an hour and a half away. But generally, if you're living in any of these populated beach communities or in town, etc., you'll have access to organic food. But in my case, it's not as accessible unless I go the specific times of the week. There, of course, is a market here every... There's a market here every week, and or even during the week, and that's called the Feria. It's basically where they bring in all the vegetables, and people who've seen that video. Okay, awesome. So obviously we've reached the final day of the most intensive part of the cleanse, which is obviously the colon cleanse in itself. And so, yeah, I actually been running around myself today, getting the house restocked again with some food. And I thought the most important thing to do to talk about today very briefly would be about what you should be eating, because of course there needs to be some level of maintenance to your system. The other thing about cleaning your body is that it's a consistent process. Obviously you can't clean everything out within one cleanse. You get a great deal of it, and then now you need to work with your body at finishing off what it needs to cleanse. Likewise, obviously you can see the benefits of cleaning the colon, and there's a lot more organs that actually can be cleansed. So obviously that's what the internal cleanse part of this is about, which we'll be going on. The internal cleanse, however, won't be broadcasted daily. Actually, what I